Usually, by the time a player hits their mid-30s in the NHL, they're considered old. The physical decline is beginning to set in for a good majority of players and is starting to show. And while there are outliers, when it comes to this list here, these players have all seemingly slowed down. In this video, we're going to go over a handful of players that are all except one in their 30s. We'll go over things such as contract stats and their situation as a whole. But before we do, if you aren't subscribed to my channel, I'd love it if you could hit the subscribe button for more NHL themed content. And with that, here are 5 NHL players that appear to be washed up. When James Van Riemsdyk was recruited to play in Columbus, it was a last-minute decision by GM Don Waddell. Reason being, the team sadly lost one of its core pieces in Johnny Gaudreau suddenly in August. Therefore, with the newly acquired cap space, Waddell scoured the market for offensive reinforcements. Van Riemsdyk had found himself being a free agent for most of the offseason, after having a decently productive campaign with Boston. Coming off of a 30-point season in 71 games played, Van Riemsdyk appeared to be potentially serviceable for CBJ coming in. Unfortunately, though, after signing a try-and-see deal amounting to $900,000, Van Riemsdyk hasn't exactly worked out for the Jackets. After he struggled to produce on the fourth line, head coach Dean Evason made the choice to scratch his player for a game against Washington, while replacing him with Zach Aston Reese. Once he came back, the forward wasn't able to notch a single point again against San Jose. This lack of execution landed Van Riemsdyk back into the press box on 2 occasions during the team's West Coast road trip. Currently, the forward, after playing in 12 contests for the Jackets, only has 4 points to show for it. After getting bought out by the Philadelphia Flyers over the summer, Cam Atkinson elected to sign with Tampa Bay for a 1-year contract. Similarly to Van Riemsdyk's deal, Atkinson agreed to a low-risk league minimum contract that sports a modest price tag of $900,000. The 35-year-old made his way to the Sunshine State in hopes that he could find his game in Florida. Reason being, Atkinson was made a healthy scratch in Philly after going pointless for 11 games straight. The forward, however, did acknowledge the fact that missing the entire 22-23 campaign could have contributed to his struggles offensively. "I didn't play at all last year," he says. "Sometimes you get away from what makes you successful in the league for a long time." So far, after playing in 11 games for the Bolts, Atkinson has only recorded a single assist throughout. Granted, he's averaging 9.5 minutes and playing a smaller role, but still, for the 2-time 60-point scorer, it's far from his best performance. While we did speak about Stammer's struggles earlier in the month, it seemed like it would be a colossal mistake for me not to add him to this list. After signing a 4-year, $32 million deal, the sky seemingly felt like the limit coming into the season for Stamkos and his new team. But as most in the hockey world know, with expectations come pressure, and Nashville hasn't dealt well with that so far. Stamkos, for instance, has only managed to notch 8 points in 16 games played for the Preds. His projected points for the season is shocking to say the least. If he continues at the same pace, Stamkos will have his least productive season out of his entire career. While yes, Stamkos is adjusting to a new team after being on the same one for so long, at the same time, this, among other things, is why the Preds are at the bottom of the Central. At 34 years of age, Stamkos is hopefully just having a tough time finding his game in a new city and isn't completely washed up just yet. When Kevin Hayes was initially traded to Pittsburgh, there were some pretty mixed feelings about the move in the Steel City. For one, the contract that the Penguins acquired wasn't the greatest, even with the salary retention, and secondly, Hayes was already beginning to show signs of decline. Granted, his minutes were slightly reduced while he was playing for the Blues, but the Penguins were his third team in just 3 seasons, which speaks volumes to his struggles, as the contract that Hayes was initially given wasn't able to match his suddenly stunted offensive production in Philly. Therefore, in an effort to score a second-round draft pick for some amazing future considerations, whatever that means, GM Kyle Dubas brought the forward to the Burgh. In theory, Hayes was going to be taking on the role left vacant by veteran Jeff Carter on the 4th line. So far, however, Hayes hasn't been able to quite redeem himself. As it stands, Hayes has only been able to record 1 goal and 3 assists after 14 games played. In his last 6 contests before he succumbed to an injury, Hayes went completely pointless. For now, the 32-year-old is nursing an upper body injury that has been labeled as week to week. Hopefully, when he returns, he'll be able to prove spectators wrong by finding his game sooner rather than later. Okay, so yes, it's a little crazy to even entertain the idea of a 23-year-old being washed up. But hear me out. I was pursuing Twitter, aka X, the other day, and there came across a tweet that had garnered 4.1 thousand likes that suggested that Trevor Zegras could be washed up. And I thought about incorporating it into a video because I really wanted to try and definitively answer that question. By now, unless you're a new hockey fan, you'll know fair and well that Zegras became noticed due to his trick shots and making John Tortorella mad with them. He was on the cover of NHL 23 along with Sarah Nurse, who, in my opinion, deserved to be there more than Zegras did. If we look at his stats, Zegras peaked at age 21. Sure, he had 75 giveaways and 31 takeaways, which is egregious, but hey, he notched 65 points. So there's that. But once the 2022-23 campaign came to a close, Zegras really began to struggle offensively. It's important to note that he was injured for most of last season, but when he was healthy, he was recording about 0.5 points per game with 15 and 31. And yes, there was an article recently that came out noting that Zegras had improved his two-way game, which is something. But knowing that his only goal thus far has been an empty netter and that he only has 3 points in 15 games is just insane. As his name continues to be in the mouths of NHL insiders for potential trade destinations, it's hard not to wonder if a fresh start is what the forward is in need of. In conclusion, it's really hard to know which players will be able to redeem themselves and which will stay on the steady decline. However, I'd still like to know what you all think. Out of all of these players, which could be the one to prove us wrong? I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. Again, if you aren't subscribed to my channel, please consider hitting that subscribe button for more content such as this. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.